Hello, Comics Alternative fans. Before we start with the episode, we want to invite all of you to check out our Patreon campaign.
That's right. Go to www.patreon.com/comicsalternative for more details. There you'll find more information about the campaign and the cool rewards levels we have.
For as little as $1 a month, you can help us maintain good quality comics talk, and the more you contribute, the more perks you get.
These include monthly podcast episodes exclusive to Patreon supporters, as well as the chance to help us choose which books we review on the show. So be sure to visit www.patreon.com/comicsalternative and become one of our proud podcast patrons.
Yeah, and now on with the show.
This is the Comics Alternative Interviews, a conversation with Jeremy Haun and Jason Hurley.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And on this interview episode, Andy and I have a fun conversation with the creators behind the new Image series, The Beauty, Jeremy Haun and Jason Hurley. But before we get to that conversation, we want to let all of our listeners know that this episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews is brought to you by the good folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you'll find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off cover price, and every single month you're going to find some wonderful specials. Now, sometimes those specials are at 45% off cover price. Sometimes the specials are at 50% off cover price, but many times the discounts go higher from there.
That's right, and if you check out their website, in their August specials, you'll be able to find a load of bundles that'll give you a deeper discount on multiple comics from the same publisher than you would get if you bought those comics individually. So be sure to check out the bundles that they have available.
That's right. They always have a great selection of bundles, but even individual titles, you can find great sales there. And in fact, had you ordered a couple of months ago Beauty #1, you would have found a very good discount. So you can pre-order your future issues of The Beauty at our sponsor's website, dcbservice.com. Go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
Well, Andy, this is a fun conversation and something we've been waiting for about a month and a half now, because you and I met Jeremy at Heroes Con, and he was excited about doing this interview from the get-go.
Yeah, that's right. And they're looking to promote this new series, The Beauty, and I was really happy that we got this opportunity because, as we'll talk about in the interview, I thought it was a great first issue.
Oh, yeah, it really is incredible. And issue #1 comes out, actually, it's next week, which is the 12th of August, so you can go to your comic shops and demand an issue. You definitely do have to check this out. But we wanted to get the interview up the week before to help do our little part to help generate interest in this title.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to our conversation.
Yep, let's do it. Okay, we're here today with Jeremy Haun and Jason Hurley, the creators behind the new image series, The Beauty. And we're glad to have you guys on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Now, before we get into actually talking about the series The Beauty, Jeremy, we ran into you at Heroes Con where we talked about doing the podcast, and you were generous enough to share some of the promotional material that you had created for The Beauty, which was an STD flyer and a condom.
Yep, that's it.
And now I think I read on Facebook that there were only 500 of these made.
Yeah, we did 500 of the condoms and the flyers too. Yeah.
So when I read that, I made sure to rinse it out. So I felt like that's a collector's item.
Right. Yeah. Put it back in the package. You're good.
Derek had his slab, by the way.
It's a CGC graded condom.
Yeah, they'll grade anything.
Yeah.
But just how did you come up with that particular idea for a promotional tool? Because I thought that was a lot of fun and it was really engaging as a potential reader.
We came up with it forever ago, and then we were talking about it a couple months ago, trying to find things that we could do to promote it, and I at least kind of forgot that we had talked about it before, so it was like all new material for me. I got all excited about it and thought I was brilliant, but it was actually probably Hurley's idea.
Yeah, it was something we had kind of talked about before, and then just basically joked about it. But then we were like, well, crap, I wonder, how much is it to get a bunch of, can you get custom printed condoms, and how much does that cost? And we started looking into it, and we're like, we could actually do this.
Well, we started talking about it, and I think, even interacting with you guys at Heroes, the moment that we showed them to people, the moment we told people about it, they got really excited and thought it was the craziest thing they'd ever heard of. And I don't know, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're probably going to steal that idea to help promote the Comics Alternative podcast. Get your own Comics Alternative condoms.
Yeah.
I guess alternative to comics. So.
Yeah. Your alternative comics is, I don't know, maybe have sex sometimes.
Yeah.
Now we started with the promotional stuff. How does that give listeners an introduction to what The Beauty is if they haven't heard? How does that promotion tie into the comic?
It does tie in. Yeah, that's interesting.
A little bit.
It's not rubbers for rubber's sake.
It was. And in fact, I think a few people that didn't understand the concept, they got really confused for a moment. But so basically, the beauty is a sexually transmitted disease in the near future that actually makes people better looking. So in some cases, some people actually want to get the disease, but the idea behind distributing condoms and the flyer is to remind people that it is in fact a disease. And our story in the comic kind of focuses on a couple of detectives who are part of a beauty task force that kind of get embroiled in the conspiracy of everything surrounding the disease and the people who are for and against it.
Yeah, so it basically kind of splits the population in two, right? Just about that. There's those who are for it. About 50%, you say, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
actually seek out the disease.
Yeah, we're 2 years into the disease existing that we know of, and at 2 years in, about 60% of the population, close to, has it, and it's just growing exponentially every day. I mean, it's that thing, it's like iPhones or whatever. It just gets trendy and people want to do it. I used iPhones as a comparison there. It was brilliant.
So what are some of the ways in which the disease, in the kind of world building that you're doing with the series, what are some of the ways in which the disease affects, the culture?
Well, it's basically if you want to be famous, you almost have to have it. It is one of the main ways. Like every movie star needs it, every supermodel needs it, because now a regular person can just get a disease and the next day they can be as hot as a supermodel. So now the supermodel has to have it to even, compare to a regular person anymore. Plus, the way it would influence, we've talked about the way it would influence like sports and politics and just even everyday life.
Well, and I think that interestingly enough, when we started, we really loved the idea of the disease itself and what it would do to society. But then we built the A story, the story of Foster and Vaughn and kind of what they needed to do and how they played into it. But the thing that we kept going back to was wanting to focus more and more on the way something like this would change our views on beauty itself. And I mean, and even there are good sides and bad sides to it. We play a lot on the negativity of the vanity, but I think that somebody that weighs 500 pounds could get the disease and would not immediately, but within a certain amount of time, be incredibly physically fit. And it's there's a lot of fun areas that we can play with in the story.
Well, and like, what does it even mean to be beautiful if anybody can be at the drop of a hat? How much does it even matter anymore?
Yeah, I mean, philosophically speaking, if everybody is beautiful, then what does non-beautiful mean, or what does beautiful mean?
Right.
Well, and I think that the further we go in the series, the more we'd like to examine those sorts of things. I think that we really start with vignettes in the first few issues, looking at people with the disease and kind of getting these little glimpses at their lives and what they do. And I don't know, that became so much fun that we really kind of wanted to try to fit in bigger chunks of it. But the A story takes up a lot of time. So,
But even in the first issue, we get to see, for example, the beauty sex club, and what that that's a trend that would come out of then this disease existing, right?
Well, I think that it just kind of heightens everything. I mean, I think that we really wanted to look at things that exist and issues in our society and just kind of dial them up to 10 a little bit. The sex club is kind of one of those things. I think that the idea that you could, the sex work industry would be kind of just a crazy thing. Suddenly, it wouldn't just be about, that itself, but it would also be about, you could go and you could pay someone to catch the beauty, and kind of, some people would just be fascinated with the beautiful people. Some people would want to catch it themselves. I mean, there's so many things you can kind of play with there.
And I know one of these, I guess, deeper issues that I'm assuming that you'll get to as the series continues is very political in nature. I mean, not just philosophical, but I'm thinking in particular of the anti-beauty forces, especially the terrorist wing of that. And we get a little bit of that in issue number 1. And in fact, I guess a good part of the story in issue number 1 is based on someone who both Foster and Kara see as a anti-beauty terrorist. But I think that there just seems to be a lot of territory that you guys could explore there that could serve as gateways or maybe even back doorways into some larger socio-political issues.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what we're going to explore with the first story arc, is those anti-beauty, quote-unquote terrorists. And Vaughn and Foster's perception of them and their perception of the police that, they are opposed to. So that yes, there's a whole lot of political ramifications. It's hard to be like, yes, this is what's going to happen in the future without actually telling you what's going to happen. So,
Hurley's new to podcasts, so I just usually blather everything and then regret it later. So you can catch up with that.
Well, it's okay if you give out any spoilers. We can always go back and edit them out.
Can you just do a really elongated beep out? Just me,
we could, yeah.
Especially if it's like a 2 or 3 minute chunk, because that would be kind of fantastic.
Well, you see what's going to happen is
yeah. But no, I think that we really we started to look at the terrorists in the story, and we're kind of fascinated by the extremes that we go to as a society. We do these ridiculously harsh things in the name of religion or our beliefs and things, and with something like the beauty, it's a disease ultimately, and it has to do with sex, and sex is taboo, and there's going to be people out there that have a problem with it, and then there's going to be people that have a problem with it for the right reasons, and how do you process that?
That's an interesting idea, because one of the things that I got the real sense of in that first issue is how this disease is such a social game changer, and one of the things is that it brings a lot of it removes a lot of the taboos surrounding sex, because once you get the disease, there's no hiding it, right? So everybody knows that you basically, if they know you and you're suddenly really hot one day, people are going to know you just had sex, and that you've had sex with somebody who had this disease.
Well, and some of the things that we started talking about pretty early on was like, what happens when a televangelist ends up being super hot the next, or what happens when
any public figure, really? The president shows up for a press conference tomorrow and looks twice as good as he did yesterday.
He's a pretty good-looking man right now, though.
Well, sure, yeah.
You could argue that he could probably have it,
Right.
I don't know. There's so much territory that we could cover, and as with any Image series, we would like to tell as much as we can. A lot of that depends on readership and interest, and us not screwing it up, I suppose.
Sure, a little bit of that.
Yeah. One of the things we talk about a lot when we have creators on the show, especially who they're doing an Image series, and we're into the first issue of the series, is how you kind of create a first issue in order to grab the reader's attention and get the readers to stick with the series. And so we talked to Tim Seeley about that with Revival, for example. And one of the things that really struck me about the Beauty #1 is how effective it is as a first issue, that you've got 3 pages at the beginning that hook the reader in and just explain what this world is, while also setting up the mystery that's going to happen. And then you end with a really nice hook to get the reader to want to read the next issue. So what kind of thoughts or decisions went into making this first issue in order to hit the reader with that?
When we were developing the series, we were part of the Top Cow pilot season project, and kind of what that breaks down to, it's you get a single issue to tell your story, to pitch your book, and then people vote on it based on that and see if they want more. So we felt like we needed to build something that would kind of slap people in the face and catch them. I mean, we already had an idea for a book about an STD that makes you beautiful, which is kind of catching. This, kind of grabs you anyway. But then we had this other thing where we had to tell enough of the story to get those readers, to get the votes, to get the book approved for series. And I think we just trimmed out every bit of fat from that first issue. We felt like, you have to have that initial hook. You have to grab people in the first few pages, and then you have to end with something that makes people almost pissed at you that they don't get the next issue right away.
Yeah, I mean, that was a lot of it was knowing that we needed to hook people immediately, and we had this 22 pages. This was all we had, and then people were going to vote on our series based on that one issue. And more than anything, we knew we needed that kind of last page shock. We needed to set everything up really well in the beginning, make sure everybody knew exactly what was going on, and then make sure that we left them wanting more.
Basically, it's crack for comics. It's comics crack.
Now, you mentioned, having to really, craft a very effective first issue for the pilot season competition. But this is so I mean, you did an outstanding job, as Andy said, just getting in there, doing what you need to do in order to capture readership. But this original idea is several years old, right? Because didn't it get the pilot season recognition back in 2011?
Yeah, we did that. I was the regular artist on the Darkness for Top Cow, and I was Top Cow's a fairly small operation. They do, at the time they were doing the Darkness and Artifacts and Witchblade, really. And then they had a couple of other small things that they were doing. And they also did pilot season. And Philip Sablick was the head of the show over there at the time. And we were pretty good friends. And he knew that I wanted to do more writing. And I had wanted to for a while. And kind of challenged me whenever the opportunity for a new pilot season came up, to pitch them something, to take a stab at writing something too. And so, Hurley and I had been talking about this project anyway, and we did that. And, I'm a fairly fast artist, or at least I have been in the past. I think I'm slowing down a little bit, but we wrote, I was drawing the Darkness, and I co-wrote and drew this at the same time, and we finished the book, and I think we were a little surprised to win, but we won. And then, from there, we knew that we were going to finish the series, but it's all in the timing, figuring that out.
Right. Yeah. Well, and like over the course of the month or two that Jeremy worked on the first issue of The Beauty of the Heart for that, he did 2 issues of The Darkness and did an issue of The Beauty. And it was like, well, you can't do that for 6 issues of our series. That would just kill him. So we just kind of had to bide our time and wait for an opportunity for schedules to open up and for us to be able to do it the way we wanted to do it, not make any compromises.
And where I was going in asking that question is that there has been, enough time where you guys could really think through the story. And so I'm wondering, how far into the series do you have things written?
We are, as far as the writing goes, we're working on technically issue 4 and 5 right now.
Yeah.
We kind of had to stop ourselves. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, when you're working on something like this, keeping it fresh and keeping yourselves interested sometimes is a trick. And there was a big temptation to fully write way ahead. And we kind of even started doing that, and then we kind of had to slap ourselves down a little bit and say, if we do that, we're going to take the fun out of the process. And part of the way that we work is I literally thumbnail the pages at the same time that we're writing them. So if we weren't careful, we would have just gotten incredibly ahead. And I guess that's not really a bad thing. But
it would have been like, at the time we were writing, we were working on issue 2 knowing that it would be a year or 2 before we really got to get into the meat of it. So, do you really want to go back in a year or 2 and just kind of redo this thing that you did already? So we basically ended up waiting until we knew we were actually going to go forward with the project and be able to do it all in a timely manner before we really got too deep into it. Because you don't want to get too deep in and then disappoint yourself when like, hey, we worked really hard on this thing, and here in a couple of years, we'll totally see some fruit from that, you know. So we just kind of waited until we knew we could get the whole thing done.
And I think that's another important factor was we didn't want to have a lot of stops and starts. We're working really hard in comics right now, especially at Image, to try and not put an issue out and then have a 6-month gap and then put another issue out. We wanted to be able to do this when we could get enough ahead to start with and really, do it right.
Now, do you anticipate having minor gaps between narrative arcs? Because a number of Image properties, you'll get, let's say, 5 or 6 issues, and then there's a break of about 2 or 3 months, and then there's the next narrative arc, and then a break of about 2 months or so. Do you anticipate a schedule like that?
We're trying to work in, again, I feel the need to say this just because I see it happen to so many books. It really does depend on, how the book's received. I mean, being able to continue past the first arc, it has to do fairly well. I mean, if we're losing money by that point, it becomes very hard for us to continue doing it. But we're hoping for the best. But if we do, basically, I think the new model is you do the arc, you have the trade come out the following month, and that's the skip month. And then the issue comes out so
yeah, a month or 2 hiatus, kind of in between story arcs is probably what we would be looking at. Give time for the it's kind of like loosely based on like a TV season model where you do the season and then you put out the DVD set. You give everybody enough time to watch the DVD set and get caught up before you put out the next. So start the next season. So that's kind of the same thing we would do is do that first story arc, then put out the trade, give people a couple weeks to read it, a month to read it, and then start in on the second story arc when everybody can be all caught up and on the same page.
Okay.
That gets back to that original question I had about crafting this first issue, because one of the things that we end up talking a lot on the show about is that that the idea of trade waiting and what does it take for a comic to keep the reader wanting to read it from month to month rather than wait for the trade. And I really felt like when I got to the end of this, like I think Jason said about not so much being mad at that the issue was over, but this is an issue that I really want to read the next issue of. This is a series I really want to read the next issue of as soon as it comes out. And in fact, we kind of asked if we could get a PDF of issue 2. And that's part of that the impulse for that was I want to know what happens next.
Everybody dies. It's terrible.
Yeah, but they die beautiful, right?
Yeah, it's they leave good looking corpses.
Right, yeah. Suddenly ninjas come out of nowhere and just kill everyone.
Wouldn't it be weird to do such an absurdist thing like that? I think people would kill us.
Are they ninjas?
There you go. You found a way around this. It's going to work.
That's actually a joke that my brother and I do to each other all the time. Is we intentionally spoil things for each other by saying ninjas jump out and kill everybody. And one time there was an issue of Daredevil that he jokingly said, "Hey man, that was really good. Ninja jump out and kill everybody." And then, that is literally what happened at the end of that comic. I was so mad at him.
Well, I mean, I'm curious. How did you guys? Well, I guess it's a 2-part question. How did you guys meet for this project, and then what was the genesis of this idea that you two had?
Well, we actually met in a beauty sex club. And we were like, man, we should do an autobiographical comic.
It was really sweet and tender too.
It was.
Which one was wearing the pig head?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's the odd thing is both of us were, and that's
how
we're like, hey, you're.
I feel like we have a lot in common.
Because that's normally the awkward thing, right? When 2 people show up at the sex party with the same pig head on, it's like, something's going to go down.
we immediately were like, we should work together. This is this.
Like,
There's some serious pork going on.
no, we've actually known each other for, I don't know, a long time.
15 years?
Something like that, probably.
Yeah.
Originally, we met because a girl I was dating was Jeremy's inker on a way old comic book. But, I mean, really, I run a comic shop, Hurley's Heroes, Joplin, Missouri. Check it out. And I've worked in and out of comic shops for most of my life. And so that's really how I met Jeremy, mostly was selling him comic books. And we ended up talking about comics all the time, becoming friends. And
well, I mean, I think I was starting my career when we first met, and then I think things just progressed, and for me. And one of the things that was always kind of fun with Hurley was that he talked about his own stories and kind of was always kind of doing things. It was more just a fun passion thing that he was doing. But I would always bounce ideas off of him, and he would do the same. And I think sometimes you talk to other people about your story ideas, and you realize that they care more about what they have to say than for the story itself. And I always felt like everything that he always said really elevated what I was wanting to do. And he always made a really good point. And he also just called me out on, my crap sometimes, because I think there were a lot of times where, I would suggest something and he'd be like, no, that you're an idiot. That can't happen. And so we were on our way from show in St. Louis, right?
Yeah, we're coming home from St. Louis.
There was a convention in St. Louis that we were at, and it's a 5-hour drive, and it was late, and we were tired. And so we ended up drinking just a ton of coffee on the way back, and I think we were probably talking 90-0 at each other.
Yeah.
But I just talked about this idea that I had for this. I had been out in L.A., and, people are beautiful out there. They're actors. And I just started thinking about the lengths that we will go to look beautiful. And I kind of pitched the idea to him, and we ended up talking about it for the better part of 4 hours straight. And at the end of that, we kind of had this weird rough shell for what the series would become. And went from there.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Jeremy kind of, told me about this high concept that he had, and we talked about how you could work that into a story in some way. And like you said, we kind of had a rough outline for what that first issue at least would be by the time we got home, and it was kind of like, so I guess we should probably do this together then.
Now I'm wondering, with both Foster and Vaughn, and maybe it's too easy of a response that I had, but when I first read issue number 1, I immediately thought of X-Files.
Huh.
Just because of the dynamic between the male and female cop, and this does deal with a rather, I don't know if you want to call it sci-fi like or just strange, fantastical situation that we have here. Was that anywhere in your heads as you started to map out this first issue?
So you really busted us, because in the next issue, Vaughn gets captured by aliens and impregnated.
Beautiful children, though.
Beautiful, beautiful children.
All right, we're just going to jump straight to the bad seasons of X-Files.
It's where my heart lies.
Yeah, I don't, not consciously. Now that you pointed out, I think we both kind of looked at each other just when you said that and went, oh, yeah. I mean, both of us were pretty huge X-Files fans, so consciously was that an influence? Not really, but yeah, I'm sure it was there.
Well, I like the dynamic of having both a female and male detective. I think there's a lot to be done there. I like seeing both points of view. And And to be honest, for the most part, it was done very well in the X-Files. Hopefully we can live up to that.
And I just noticed that Vaughn seems to have red hair.
Yeah.
Wow. Cue the X-Files music.
True. Yeah. This is a conspiracy theory.
But and part of that dynamic too, and this I don't think is spoiling anything, is revealed early on that Vaughn has the beauty.
Yeah.
And is part of the beauty task force and the police department of investigating beauty-related crimes. But her attitude towards it seems to be different from other people who get it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in writing it, both of us kind of immediately really loved working on Vaughn's character. Vaughn was focused on being a fantastic detective. She was good at her job and never cared about how she looked or anything to do with that. She was just spectacular. And then she met somebody, and it was you meet somebody and they don't care how you are. They just like you for you, and things were fantastic. And it was very early on in the disease, so it was just this beautiful boy that liked her and got her, and things were kind of perfect. And one thing led to another, and one morning she woke up and she looked different too. And it was early enough on that she didn't process it like that, and it kind of changed everything for her. And after that, she looked different and was in a lot of ways treated differently, but still didn't care at all. She just wanted to be a good cop. She just wanted to do what she did.
Are we going to see flashbacks to her kind of before the beauty in the series?
Not in this arc.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely have some things that we want to do, and we want to be able to see Foster and Vaughn again. But in this arc, we kind of really kick things into high gear from issue 1. So
yeah. There's
not a lot of room to dilly-dally.
Yeah, because we structured the first issue like we did, we kind of accelerated a lot of the things that we might have prolonged had we, started it with a different format. But I think we're both really happy with the way we're doing things now, and that we've got a series that hits the ground running and just stays at a kind of frenetic pace throughout this first story arc.
Now, I have to ask you about what I see in this particular title, given your premise, is the challenge of the art. Because, Jeremy, in doing the art, almost all of your characters look really good. I mean, there's some character. Well, okay, my question is, what kind of safeguards do you put on your own work to where everyone doesn't look too good? Because it just seems like everyone could easily be seen as having the beauty. I mean, there's some characters in this first issue who obviously don't have the disease. For instance, Foster and Vaughn's captain. I don't think he has the beauty yet. But a lot of the other characters here, sometimes it's almost like maybe or maybe not. Have you found that a challenge in terms of visually representing these characters? Do you feel like you need to make them like really, really beautiful, very attractive?
It's not easy. I mean, in fact, I think one of the things that I find myself toiling over the most is this person with the beauty beautiful enough? And is this person that doesn't have the beauty, kind of obvious enough, I guess? I think, you can easily do the shorthand of kind of big, ugly, goofy looking dudes, but, you realize that people are on their own accord naturally beautiful anyway. It's so one of the biggest benefits that we had was our colorist John Rausch. If you look at the pages, people that have the beauty are kind of almost glowing. They're very saturated. They kind of pop. Everything else is kind of almost a little bit grayed out. We talked to John about it when we started working on the project, and he really went with it, and I think he kind of saved our bacon sometimes.
Well, and just nailed it right off. Like we tried to like haphazardly explain for a half hour what we were wanting to do, and then he like sent us pages like this, and we're like, yes, exactly, you're the man.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I never saw that, and now looking back at the pages, it really does operate. I mean, on a subconscious level, I guess, and then when you realize that that's what you're up to, it really shows up. It makes a lot of sense.
Right, and that's the best thing about what he did is that it's subtle enough that it's not glaringly obvious who each of the beauties is, but once you know what you're looking for, you're like, oh, okay.
Well, and I think that's the strength of bringing on somebody that gets it from the beginning. I mean, there's a weird delineation, I think, in production in comics where it's like arguably the writer or the artist, they're kind of like the stars, and then the colorist is kind of an afterthought, and a lot of times the letter is an afterthought. And I think I disagree with that in a big way, because this book wouldn't be what it is without having John on the colors, and Stephen from Phonographics came in and lettered and designed the book. And both of those guys created something that truly elevates this in a way that we can be proud of. It's not just that Hurley and I working on it.
Huh. This is interesting because Andy mentioned a little while ago the way that you establish the premise. And, basically you have 2 or 3 pages with a little bit of exposition that tells the reader, from the get-go, this is the situation that we have. And I'm looking at page 1, where you have the 4 long horizontal strips that compose the first page. And it's a crowd of people. And I was looking at them just now, and there were some that I thought, okay, they probably do have the beauty, but then from what you just said about what the colorist did to kind of bring out the glow of the individuals, I'm looking at that second strip, the horizontal strip on page 1, and there's one woman that I just assumed, okay, well, she has the beauty, but she doesn't glow in the same way as 2 or 3 people in that same panel. So I guess that's one of those fence setters, so to speak, in terms of does she or doesn't she?
Right.
And I mean, and that does really help establish the mystery and the ambiguity, I think, that's woven into this story.
I think that I don't know. I'm actually kind of excited right now because you're looking into you're finding all of the little Easter eggy kind of things that we hid in there. That was a lot of fun. I like the idea that even throughout, we can play with what is objective beauty. Well,
and it's kind of like we were talking about with Vaughn. Like she met this beautiful boy and fell for him, and didn't know he had the beauty. And we talked about how obvious it would be if you saw somebody one day and you saw them the next day and they were twice as good looking. But if you just met somebody for the first time, are they just good looking?
Well, especially early on, I think that was a very easy thing to have happen within the first 6 months of the disease.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And we really enjoy the little details, and like I said, John just has a way of focusing on the right things. It kind of blows me away.
Jeremy, you said something in an earlier answer about when you're drawing, wondering if you're drawing the character beautiful enough and so on. Does that concern ever become like a kind of existential crisis where you start to question your own idea of beauty and whether you're doing something creating a beautiful character that, may or may not be beautiful, or I don't know. Is there any kind of philosophical concern that you ever get when you're thinking about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of plagued us from moment one, because are you dealing with society's ideas of what beauty is? Are you dealing with, like, personally what the two of us find beautiful?
Well, and it's, I mean, the old cliche is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so, what if there's somebody out there that, likes people a certain way and gets the beauty and realizes that it has made them exactly the opposite of what they personally find beautiful? I don't know. There's a whole other door of philosophical questions you can open up there too.
Well, and I think that we actually had to come up with, kind of based on that dilemma, I think we had to come up with a set of rules, and kind of, you can slightly cheat them a little bit this way or that way if you want to. We don't always necessarily out and out explain how it works, but I think the disease itself pushes towards androgyny in a certain way, and I think that it becomes about, like, fitness, in a lot of, like the ideal, there's very little body fat and things like that, but I mean, it's, if you ask, like, I don't know, I think.
Well, and it's not. I mean, it's a disease that does certain physical things to your body. It's not like the disease itself has any intention of making people beautiful.
Right.
That's more something that people saw what it did. What the I don't know what the word I'm looking for right now is. The symptoms of the disease, were, and people named it the beauty. So it's more like society projecting onto what the disease does rather than the disease doing the thing, I think.
Now, we mentioned toward the beginning of our discussion some of the publicity that you guys did to generate interest in this new series, the condom and the pamphlet. Now, Jason, you said that you have a comic shop. Are you going to do anything special there to help launch the title? The day the book comes out, August 12th, we're actually doing a big signing at my store, and we're actually collaborating with a couple other local businesses. We have a local gourmet hot dog place that's amazing, and they are doing a special dish that day based on concepts from the book, and then a local bar is doing a cocktail based on the book. And so we've kind of got a whole day of activities planned for people here in Joplin. Have you contacted companies like Maybelline to see if they want to get in on it?
Can I send them the condoms? I think that would be a good idea.
There you go.
Is there how big is Joplin?
We are right at about 50,000. It's a small, mid-sized city, but we are the largest city in our area, so we pull about 250,000 daytime population with people coming in for work and stuff like that. So yeah. It's a nice city. I mean, we really do have a pretty good.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd thing. The city, like in the middle of the day on a weekday, has 5 times as many people in it as it does at night on a weekend, because we pull from a metropolitan area that's about 60 miles diameter.
Mm-hmm.
I know all about this because I run a local business and I did all kinds of studies this stuff before we opened. So because it's interesting trying to tell people, like, oh yeah, well, we live in this town that has 50,000 people, but we have this many stores and this many that. And people are like, why? How can a city that size support it? And it's like, it's because we're actually, it's kind of a huge metropolitan area. So.
Well, another question I have relating to publicity of the beauty is, Jeremy, today you have up on your blog the Beauty Free campaign, and I find that interesting, and I was wondering if you guys can explain a little bit more to our listeners what the Beauty Free campaign is.
Yeah, we had we had really been trying to spend time figuring out interesting and unique ways to promote the book and get it out there, and opportunities for us to talk about it, but then allowing people to kind of get involved themselves and feel a little bit of ownership for the project. And I was talking about, wanting to do these images from the book that kind of said something, said like Hollywood hot or beautiful or whatever it was. And I was kind of describing it to Hurley, and Hurley was like, "You're talking about memes, dude. I mean, you realize that, right?" And so then I'm not as hip as he is. So
that's true.
But so we ended up, we found these a meme generator and ended up kind of messing with it. And we did a series of them before this that said things like Hollywood hot or whatever, and then had the hashtag the beauty. But then we were talking to a friend about some different ideas for the project, and I said, we need like hashtag beauty and then hashtag not a beauty or something like that. And she's like, "You just need to use hashtag beauty free." And the moment that she said that, I was like, yes, that is just perfect. And so beauty free kind of brings to mind a lot of different possibilities there. First, you're talking about, I don't have the disease, but then I think it kind of takes an air of body positivity. And I think that as two guys that are not particularly good looking,
That's not what I would.
Okay, well, we're not ourselves, outward appearance obsessed. I like the idea of body positivity, and I like that we're doing a book that's about obsession with beauty, but I wanted to talk about the other side of it a little bit and say, it's okay to be who you are. And so we were looking at other meme trends out there, things like the people doing selfies when they first wake up, or people doing selfies without makeup and stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to follow in that trend with this and just do something that really focused on the idea of being beauty free. And it doesn't matter how you are, and we've had an incredible number of people so far.
We've had a lot of people, because we just started that literally this morning, and we've had tons and tons of response to it. So it's gone really well.
Yeah, and it's quite simply people doing kind of a selfie kind of shot, however they want to look. We got some people that look really intentionally goofy all over the place, to some people who look very, very glamorous themselves. But the idea is, this is me as I am, and I am in fact beauty free. And so we ran with it.
And you mentioned on your blog that you plan on doing something with some of these beauty free images.
Yeah, we're going to, just because, I don't know, I like the idea that you can kind of catalog something like this. So we're going to collect all of the images and print them in the book. So, if you use the hashtag beauty free and post one of these meme selfies.
And tag at least one of us on social media so we can find it.
Preferably both, really. We're quickly finding that people are tagging one or the other of us, and the other doesn't even realize they're out there. So, but if you do this, we'll publish it in the back of the book. That's going to be for issue 2.
Well, I can tell you that we have a Comics Alternative beauty-free image ready to go.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Is it both of you together, or is it one of you, or?
Yeah, it's both of us, because otherwise I don't know if it were, either of us, I don't know if we could use the beauty-free hashtag, because, it's who we are. But together, we're definitely beauty-free.
Excellent. I like that.
So wanted to actually get into a couple other things with you, Jeremy. You mentioned earlier that you're a pretty fast artist, and that is definitely one thing I've noticed as a reader, seeing a lot of stuff with your name on it come out. especially in the last couple of years, both stuff like Batwoman and a lot of work for the Batman books, but also the recently ended Vertigo series Wolf Moon and Constantine for DC, and those books, you've got the kind of standard superhero and the horror books that your work really works well in different genres. And so that's, I guess, where my question was going with. Is there any kind of preferences that you have for genres that you work in, or do you like that variety?
I like a little variety. I think my heart always leans towards something a little bit weird or horror based. Stuff like Wolf Moon, always, I mean, any chance to get monsters, tearing stuff up is always kind of nice. Originally, I think if you would have asked, 19-year-old me what I was going to do with my career, the only thing I really wanted to do was work for Vertigo. I never really expected to start a career drawing various superhero books, but it just happened. But I like drawing just about everything. I can't imagine myself doing anything too cutesy, just because I like I like kind of dark stuff and gore a little bit. But I don't know. It's all fun. It's, I wake up every day. I have my breakfast at like noon, and I come down in my pajamas and draw comic books all day. It's all fun. It's like the best thing you could ask for.
Is that how you created beauty?
In my pajamas?
Yeah. Or with a pig head on.
Yeah. Both.
That just was I was reminded of something else. We had talked to you at Heroes Con, Jeremy, and in the previous year, I got a sketch from you at Heroes Con, and I just want to say what a nice tight ship you and your wife Lori run at cons. You've got a good system where you text the person when the sketch is done, so you don't have to, feel like I didn't have to feel like I was pestering every, hour or so. Is my sketch done yet? Is my sketch done yet? So I thought that was great.
We've been doing this for, we started out, working together, and my career wasn't quite, where it is now by any means. And she was coming with me to shows, and then we had a kid, and that pretty much meant that she couldn't come to shows with me for a long time. And finally, I got to the point in my career where I was having to have somebody come and help me at the table, just because I'm literally drawing as fast as I can every day, trying to get sketches done for people. Plus, I want to have genuine, real interaction, talk to people, and, it's nice to be able to connect. And hell, half the reason that I go to these shows is just so that I can talk to another human being. I'm always locked in my studio. But so then she decided to, that she could come back with me. We leave the kids with our parents. And, we've quickly figured out that, the more that you could do together to help the experience for everybody, it just works better. It allows me to focus on the art and talking to people. She takes care of the money. She makes sure that you guys are happy. She sends out the texts and lets you know what's going on. If there are any issues, she takes care of it. It's kind of a perfect system for us.
Well, I know that, Jason, you had mentioned that you had the shop to look after. Have you been going to many cons, or do you have plans to go, maybe the two of you together to help publicize the beauty?
Yeah. I used to do a whole lot of cons as a retailer, just setting up a booth and whatnot. And that's actually like the show we were talking about. We came back from St. Louis. Was a show that we were at because he was there in Artist Alley and I was there as a dealer. So I used to do that a lot. We went to a few cons together to promote the pilot season version of the book, and actually that's kind of what Jeremy was talking about when he realized that he was at a point where because he'd been doing a lot of conventions by himself, and then we went to New York, and I helped him out at the table and stuff. And he's like, "Oh my God, I just need somebody here all the time for this. This is great," and that kind of got Lori back into things. But back to what you were actually asking, I'm going to be trying to go to a lot more conventions. We've actually got one this weekend in Kansas City. We're going to be going back to New York again this year. And I've got an employee at the store nowadays, and he'll be watching the store for me.
Which is, I think it's a nice thing because that allows, there is a different kind of interaction at shows with fans. I think that as creators, we feel like we're throwing things out into the dark a lot. You get people giving you Facebook messages or tweets, telling you that they love the book or that you suck and need to die. You're my own experience. But there's that interaction, but then there's just such a genuine interaction with meeting people and really getting to talk about something. Even if it's just a few minutes, it's nice. I like meeting you guys that way. I think that it kind of, it leaves a lasting impression on everybody. Hopefully it's a good impression, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think it does. And, any listeners out there, I don't know if this ends up overwhelming you, Jeremy, but any listeners out there that want to get a sketch, I would highly recommend hitting you up at the next con.
I'm going to be really pissed if the next Heroes, I'm just so frazzled that I can't even.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I love it. And sketching for people, doing commissions at shows, it's a completely different animal. It's the chance to draw stuff that you might not otherwise get to draw. I mean, look, I don't get to draw Hellboy as part of my career, but somebody's going to ask me to draw Hellboy, and I'm going to love it. And I like the idea that it's something very, very special and unique for a fan. If you get a fan that asks you, to draw
Wild Dog.
Wild Dog. Okay, yeah, that's random, but I have drawn one. But
man, I love Wild Dog.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
He's like Jason with Uzis instead of submachine.
He is fighting terrorism in the Quad Cities.
Exactly.
Sorry.
No.
I get excited when Wild Dog comes up, and that's not the first time it's come up on the podcast.
Well, hey, all three of you that get excited about Wild Dog, you just there's probably a Facebook group you can make or something.
I'm sure there is.
This would be perfect. But no, I don't know. There's stuff like even Wild Dog. It means something to somebody, and the stuff that the characters that you're into that really mean a lot to you might not be the ones that other people like, and I love. I almost like when somebody comes up and they're like, okay, I've got kind of a obscure character that I'd really like for you to draw. And usually I'm going to love that. I've got a guy that every year that I see him in Heroes, he has me do, he has a giant 11x17 monsters book. And over again, every time I see him, I get to draw a different, it's not really monsters, it's slashers and stuff like, but it's horror based. But I'll get to do I did It for him. I did Jason Voorhees. I did Leatherface. I've done American Mary, which is kind of an obscure horror thing. But I get to do different things. I've got a guy in Kansas City that has it's like Kirby Monsters book. And every time I see him, he's like, "Hey, you want to do another Kirby monster?" And
that book is awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
that guy's sketchbook is really killer.
Well, I think the more unique and interesting you make a sketchbook, the more people want to draw it. I think if you're like, "Hey, here's my Batman sketchbook. I only get headshots of Batman," people are like, okay, that's cool. I'll do it. I mean, I'm happy to.
Sure.
But if you ask me to draw a monster or something like that, hell yes.
And it sounds like with the Hellboy example you mentioned earlier, that's also somebody looking at your work and saying, Jeremy Haun's a person that I want to get drawing Hellboy, which may again not be something that you might think about yourself, right?
Well, there's a really interesting example of that. I had somebody come up and had me draw Batwoman, and he was like, I really think that you should draw Batwoman someday. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm never going to get to do that. And then like a year and a half later, I was on Batwoman. And I was like, yeah, and she has arguably one of the best costumes in comics. I mean, it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there drawing it, and I was like, I had no idea how to do my approach. And finally, by my last issue of the series, I think I kind of had it down. So,
well, one of the things that Andy was, I guess, highlighting is your ability to really connect to fans, and that leads me back to Beauty. Now, Andy and I have advanced copies or PDFs, I guess, of issue number 1. So we haven't seen the actual issue, which, from what I understand, you guys just got a big pack of those through the mail today, right?
Yeah, we got a giant box of them.
Yeah.
It's kind of awesome.
Well, I'm wondering, in the issue and then subsequent issues, are you going to have something like a letters page where you would encourage this kind of interaction between reader and you guys?
Hurley hates all interaction. He wants to hide from everything.
That's pretty true.
I'm going to argue that, and I'm going to say that I would like a little interaction. So we'll probably have something kind of in the middle. One of the things that I've kind of been wanting to do, and I kind of was talking about it earlier, I want to spotlight the other creators working on the book a little bit. I'm going to probably do a Q&A with John and with Stephen, the letterer, and talk a little bit about their addition to the process. I think that's pretty important. But, we'll have some kind of letters page. And one of the things that I think we do want to be careful of is like self-aggrandizing and really, tooting our own horns too much. Dude, you guys have a Tumblr too. It's cool. We're not going to force our stuff down your throats. Unless you want us to.
Well, how far, without giving anything away, what can you tell us that we have to look forward to in subsequent issues of The Beauty?
Well, I mean, I will say that there is a very dramatic ending to number 6. You might hate us. I don't know. But from there, we are really talking about taking a look at the other parts of the world, and looking at how different people interact with the Beauty and what that does to lives. We've got a pretty specific time period established there. You've got basically 2 years to look at, and we want to look at how some of the minor characters in this arc, do things. It'll all connect back. We kind of almost want to do sort of a criminal sort of thing with the book and allow for different,
Yeah, a lot of the socio-political ramifications that we discussed earlier, we're not getting to explore as much or as deeply in this first story arc as we wanted to. So that's kind of a lot of the subsequent stories are going to be focusing on those things and delving into that kind of stuff a little bit more. Some of them will be jumping back in time to the beginning of the DCs, only a year or so in when everybody thinks it's the greatest thing ever. And then more stories here toward the, 2 years in when people are starting to die. So we've got a whole range of the development of the disease and the characters that we've developed so far that we can play in.
So it sounds like we have a lot to look forward to. Jason and Jeremy, I want to thank you guys for introducing our listeners to The Beauty. And again, we want to mention that issue number 1 comes out August 12th. So if you didn't pre-order a copy or don't have one waiting for you at your comic shop, definitely run out and get it.
Yes, do.
Yes, we highly encourage that.
Yes, and we recommend it. It's a great first issue, and I really enjoyed reading it.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for being on the podcast, guys.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so that was fun to get some insight into the ideas behind the Beauty, how the series was originated, and what are some of the kind of themes and ideas that are going to be coming out as the series progresses.
Exactly. And I was also intrigued by the various things that these guys are doing to help generate interest in the title. We started off the interview by you asking them about the condom issue, which I think is hilarious. But then they have this beauty-free campaign going on. And, you and I have created a beauty-free icon we're going to be putting up on Twitter. So we're going to help spread the love as well, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that was a fun conversation and an even better first issue. So you guys definitely have to check out The Beauty from Image Comics, issue number 1. And we want to thank Jason and Jeremy for talking with us about that.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah. And if you want to pre-order future issues of The Beauty, you can do so by going to the website of our sponsor, dcbservice.com. You can't beat the prices at Discount Comic Book Service. Go there and they'll take care of all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, be sure to get in touch with us and let us know the kind of things that you're going to be reading. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find in the right-hand side of your browser a tab that says Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can send us a message through the wonders of SpeakPipe. It's very easy to use. Or if you want to punch some numbers, you can call us on the telephone. Our number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right. Or you can get a hold of us by email. We are 2guys@comicsalternative.com. Or you can get a hold of us individually. I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
Or you can follow our Twitter feed where we announce new content to the podcast as well as updates to the blog. Check out our Twitter feed at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. We're also on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Google+, and on Pinterest. You can also go to our YouTube channel and consume our episodes that way. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn. And as always, you can find every single one of our episodes as well as our list of reviews and comics-related commentary that we put up on our blog. And that's at the website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right. All the ways to get a hold of us and find out what we're doing.
That's right. And what we're doing is interviewing great people like Jason and Jeremy. So we hope you guys enjoyed that conversation.
Yep.
And until next time, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.